Hi, good evening, everybody. Just give us a minute while we let participants come in and then we'll get started. Great, just a couple of seconds. Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Scott Draw. I'm the Director of Sport at Millfield School. Welcome to our webinar tonight. This is part of our Parents in Sport series where we're trying to share some content that hopefully will be useful for you as parents. A, just to understand the Millfield environment, and B, really just to support your child when they're attending the school and particularly experiencing their time in sport. Now, tonight is really part of a package of work we're trying to do increasingly with students, particularly those from year 11, 12 and 13, around something we called Student of Your Sport. And this is very much about giving students the skills out of pool, off court, that'll be really important for their overall experience and their positive development in their sport, especially when they leave here. So tonight is one that comes up a huge amount for everybody, and it's about nutrition and food. And just before we get started, I just want to introduce some of the panelists. We're really fortunate to have some students. If I just introduce Darcy. So Darcy's a swimmer. If you just unmute Darcy, just let the audience know what you're studying and yeah, your time at Millfield so far.
Hi, I'm Darcy. I'm in uppers. I'm a swimmer, as Dr. Draw said. I'm studying biology, chemistry and geography. And I've been at Millfield since year 9 now. So this is my last year.
Great, Darcy. And Izzy?
Hi, I'm Izzy. I'm also a swimmer. I joined Millfield in year 7 and was a keen netballer, athletics, cross country and swimming, obviously. Now I'm kind of soloed into swimming only, and I study chemistry, maths and philosophy. So yeah.
Great. So a good example of the Millfield mix there from Izzy. And Scarlett, all yours, you just do an intro and then we'll get going.
Hi, I'm Scarlett. I'm in uppers too. I play hockey. I'm studying biology, chemistry and PE, and this is my second year at Millfield.
Thank you. So just to give you a feel, the reason we're having the students is here, they'll be able to be very authentic to talk about their experiences here and the challenges around eating well, particularly as a sport. They're all student athletes. They're all spend a lot of time in their sport and want to use their sport for when they exit here. And nutrition and both the hydration plays a significant part of what we do. And also just want to introduce Mr. Adam Sutton. So Adam's our in-house nutritionist. He works with Chartwells. He works across the dining hall, across our boarding houses and across all of our sports, and is part of our mission in some respects to help prepare young people, particularly for their world in and around food. I'm going to hand over to Adam first. He's just going to take us through some content for 10 to 15 minutes. And then we're going to go into some questions. You can also share your questions through the chat function, and we'll deal with those in that sort of section as well. So if you have anything come up that you're interested in or that we don't cover, feel free that you can drop it in and then we'll take it from there. So Adam, I'm going to pass across to you. Everyone else should just be on mute. So just let me know when you want to move on. And yeah, we'll get going.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Straw. Hi, everyone. So what I'm just going to go through in the next, sort of like, as we said, 10 to 15 minutes is just a lot of top line things. So looking at fueling requirements at Millfield, the challenges that we do face at Millfield, what sort of an ideal world in what sort of like a perfect picture does look like with the day of eating, sort of both in the dining hall and out of the dining hall. And then also looking at how we're trying to sort of work towards that student of the sport mindset to really sort of give the skills and knowledge for life post Millfield when we do go into sort of higher education and having to fend for ourselves. So next slide, please. So on the screen now, we've got everything that sort of breaks down into sort of total daily energy expenditure. So a lot of my education sessions that I do sort of are based around these principles. So all the major components. So as we can see, the largest factor contributing to our total energy expenditure, basal metabolic rate, going to be huge in sort of the age demographic here at Millfield due to that growth and development that's going to be going on in these adolescence years. I place a lot of big focus on my education sessions is just getting students to understand and appreciate this sort of gravity that this does have towards overall energy expenditure. So not just looking at exercise as our way that we burn energy, but also all the bodily processes, all those physiological functions that are going on throughout the day. Next up, we then have NEAT, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. I think this is massively underrated in and underestimated in the Milford environment. So these are all the sort of everything that contributes towards energy expenditure that we don't consider structured exercise. So whether that's walking around campus, concentrating in lessons, socializing, completing boarding house responsibilities, presentations in lessons, everything when we're being active, but we don't consider it to be structured exercise. And I think that can just really accumulate quite quickly in this environment. You just look at the distance between the swimming pool and the dining hall, you're doing that a few times a day. That's all of a sudden going to be quite a large number of steps that are going to contribute to an overall energy expenditure. Next up, you then have thermic effective food, simply the energy which is used to digest and absorb food. And then finally on top, we have exercise and structured activity. So this would be different, obviously, between individuals and then within sporting, between different sports and different training programs. So in some cases, this is going to be an extremely large contribution to overall energy expenditure, and sometimes it may actually be quite minimal. So we really need to think about where we can, being specific and thinking about how much that's going to contribute to energy expenditure. Next slide, please. So if we could break it down and look what a perfect sort of ideal world day of eating, obviously there's lots of different challenges that we do face in terms of dining hall feeding, but assuming that a student is able to make it to all three main meals in the day, you can have breakfast, which we have daily staples, which you can sort of produce quite a high quality full breakfast. So the daily sort of regulars, we have porridge and a variety of toppers, cut fruit, yogurt, granola, eggs always available, beans, toast, and a range of cereals. You would then move through to in-house sort of snacking in the morning, mid-morning snack. So all students have tuck shop and sixth form cafe available to them for the sixth formers. Here there are fruit bowls available day in, day out, and sort of a good variety of healthy snacks should be available as well. So looking at the Get Buzzing cereal bars that I know we started a bit of a partnership before I started here, but they're a great way to sort of fuel throughout the day. The ability to have in-house snacks as well, and then coaches also have the availability to order snacks to have pre-training. If a student's got either a personal development session or a group session, they can order snacks in to have pre-training. Then looking in at lunch, there'd be a variety of hot options, so both meat and vegetarian options. The extensive salad bar as well, which always has two main composites, which would be sort of a protein source and a complex carbohydrate. Students do then have the ability to go up for seconds, as well as having then a dessert and always a fresh fruit stand. Again, in the afternoon ideal world, they'd have the similar sort of snacks to the morning, and then supper is pretty much a repeat of lunch, but it's just a much more of a relaxed atmosphere, and there tends to be a bit more of a social focus during this time point. So next slide, please. Then combining that first slide and the second slide, thinking about what are the actual sort of calorie recommendations and requirements for these students, going to be extremely large. Whereas if we break it down and sort of starting off to look at government recommendations, the government say 2,500 for a boy and 2,000 calories a day for a girl. Whereas it's very likely that in this Milford environment, due to the extreme training schedules that are on, extreme sort of day-to-day requirements around campus, like high cognitive load, the energy requirements is going to be a lot greater than what's given out by the government. So obviously, is it almost impossible to give an exact number, sort of how many calories we should be thinking about per day? So the closest research we can look at without doing sort of quite complex and sophisticated research ourselves is to look at research in academy sports. So studies that have been done show that under 18s average about 3,500 calories a day, under 15s just over 3,000, and then under 12s, under 13, so the lower end of the school, just under 3,000. What was really interesting from this study is the largest result they did see was 5,000 calories a day, which is obviously then over double what we do see from the government recommendations. So we really need to be conscious about making sure that students are able to fuel these requirements and meet these requirements. So shown on the screen is how a student could get in sort of into that region, that ballpark figure of energy expenditure. So the examples on the day is taken from a real life menu plus the snacks that I either purchased in the tuck shop, in the cafe, and coaches ordering in, as well as then in-house in the evening. So this day totals are just over around the 4,500 mark. And to ensure that students do have the ability and the feasibility to meet these requirements, one thing we do focus on is the salad bar, because obviously that's the part where they have self-service. So it's a part that I really try and push ownership of nutrition. They can plate up meals. They're quite sort of with an unlimited sort of access to food there, as well as always having that ability to go back for seconds. Next slide, please. So just keeping on the food, the sort of food theme, I've thrown up an example of the menu. So this is just one day looking at breakfast and then lunch, and then breakfast, lunch, and a salad bar menu. So every sort of, as well as these sort of set staples we have throughout the week, we also have sort of pop-up event, well, not events, but sort of pop-up stations. So 2 times a week, that would be a pasta bar, been on Monday and Wednesday. Wednesday being it's a day that a lot of sports will have fixtures in the afternoon, so a great way to sort of fuel up, ready for those sporting events. Then on Tuesday, we have a weekly chef's pass, where that's more of a theatre dish for a chance to sort of show a different type of food that may be on the typical week-to-week menu. My personal favourite from this terms is a seafood and chorizo paella. And then on the Thursday on this World Food Bar, we have sort of special pop-up events where there's barbecue chicken wings one week, a hot dog bar the other week, and then the final week is a vegan curry shack where there's 2 curries, chapatis, and then a style of rice. So there are lots of options available there, and it's just about trying to encourage students to sort of explore what can be available rather than just going through the motions of getting what is sort of the one option that's given on the main option first. Next slide, please. So like a lot of sporting organisations and institutions, we do hold a food first philosophy. So this is just having a real big focus on getting that solid foundation of the pyramid with high quality whole food. Do get a lot of questions from sort of, to be fair, younger students coming through the school asking about creatine and caffeine supplementation protocols, whereas it's sort of trying to really instill this educational message of the importance and the value of a food first approach. It's not sort of saying that some of those products aren't sort of proven or have the research behind them. It's just understanding the value that food has in this educational environment. However, recently we have sort of updated this food first philosophy, and we've sort of termed it a food first but not food only approach, because we understand that there is a difference between what's perfect in an ideal world, and then also what is practical. So we have to understand the challenges that could be faced, one in meeting nutritional requirements when, for example, traveling, or 2, just the nature of having extreme large energy intakes required. So this is where we're going to look at more of a functional food approach, which I'll talk about a bit later on. But that's just how we can get that blend into what is perfect and what is practical, but always boiling down to this food first approach. Slide, please. So like we said, there is the perfect versus practical element, and there are lots of challenges that we do face both as sort of catering and as a school when it comes to meeting nutritional requirements. So big thing to be mindful of is catering for a whole school. The student body is about 1,300, so we've really got to be sort of mindful of the range of different requirements, taste preferences, training schedules. Ideal world, you'd be able to have a station where someone's got a low training day or a high training volume, and they'll go to their necessary canteen, but we don't have that luxury. So we really got to be mindful of just thinking about where we can explore different options whilst catering for that whole school. The next one's really sort of in a lot of conversations we're having at the moment is timetables and busy schedules. It's becoming increasingly common that students are extremely time poor, so we need to really think about where when students are unable to get to the dining hall and they struggle to sort of get that sort of full at least 30 minutes to sit down and have a full meal, how we can start to meet nutritional requirements. So to combat this, there are several things we have got in place. We're under no illusions that it's not perfect at the moment, but this is why we're working on it. So for example, students can apply for chits where they can get a takeaway meal from the dining hall. There's also the grab and go option, which can be approved through house parents. And we also want to start looking at, this is very early days in conversations, but looking at whether there can be a restructuring of the timetable to prioritize activities, the students with activities, so they can get into the dining hall and have the sort of the luxury of being able to use the full range available in the dining hall. The next challenge is a nature of the training demand. So looking at those extreme fueling cases. So some cases, these large energy intakes are going to be naturally quite hard to meet within food. So that's why we do allow the ability to come back for seconds. Within that, we do have to be mindful of all organizations are sort of suffering food waste and food challenges with waste. So that's why we have not everything being self-serve, but to combat that and tackle that, there is the option to come back for seconds, and that is sort of unlimited. The final challenge that's sort of picking out these main 4 is when students are off campus during dining hall times. So for example, if they're evening at an external academy or external club, how they can then meet those fueling requirements and get access to a good meal. So one sort of one thing we put in place to sort of try and combat that is ability, if that's communicated with house parents and other students in-house, the ability for another student that is able to get to the dining hall, bringing back a takeaway meal to be refrigerated. Again, that's obviously not a perfect solution, but it's practical. Food in-house, so we're looking at increasing the ability to have frozen meals in, and then naked noodle pots, which are available to be ordered in, sort of like a healthier pot noodle version to get sort of more of a larger snack. So yeah, like I said, we do understand that these need to be improved, which is why we've started this conversation, started these talks about how we can progress this and move forward to meet these challenges. Next slide, please. So on the screen now is an example day of pretty much where perfect and practical sort of overlap and have to sort of try and have this meeting context specific demands. So these are fueling timelines for both hockey and netball events. So massive challenge nutrition is when students have large fixtures, large amounts of fixtures in one day, sort of having to fuel that and sustain that energy, one throughout the whole day and 2 between matches. So it's a great way of thinking about context is so key in nutrition. A lot of these snacks are on the board on the screen now, although sort of not typically your sort of healthy or most ideal snacks, quite high in refined sugar. However, looking at the context, when we've got limited time to take on food and we do need that quick release of energy between fixtures, they can be sort of tick that box as such. Again, not perfect, but it's practical. And this is where we're really looking to build a sort of more sustainable and supportive network and program with this. So we're looking at being able to provide functional food packages that students can buy into and have science and sport products available, but looking at purely functional foods, not going to be looking at ergogenic aids, so like caffeine and creatine, but mainly focusing on carbohydrate and protein products that will fit in and help fuel these days on tournaments. So moving into the dining hall, one of the big focuses I have is food labeling. So really trying to put educational resources out there to help students structure plates of food. So scattered around the dining hall will be these 3 pie chart plates. So to enable students to think about how they would plate up a meal and be really specific to thinking about their fueling requirements for the day. So taking the ownership and thinking, is it a low intensity training day? Is it a moderate training day? Or do we have a high demand day? And thinking about how our food intake might differ on those days. So I've got the food labels, trying to keep it really simple in terms of just color coding food groups. And then the same labels will then be around each menu item so that students can just use those colors and make up a plate best suited for their day. So like I said, this is on the main servery and on the salad bar. So
yeah, no worries.
Then, as we've said, the big focus we've got as a department is thinking about making students student of their sport, giving them the tools, skills and knowledge so that they can support life post Millfield. So we've got a sports nutrition curriculum in place, which takes students from quite sort of a generic top line sort of view of nutrition, thinking about what is healthy eating, what are energy requirements, what does contribute to energy requirements, thinking into looking at the certain food groups, how we can then fuel and recover and make correct choices based on this knowledge in the dining hall. Then looking into how we can change nutrition specifically to fuel for the work required. So that's going back to those pie charts that we have in the dining hall. And then the final few modules are setting students up for that life post Millfield, so that when they're thrown into higher education environments, student athletes at university, they're able to cater them for themselves and fuel themselves correctly. So there is a big sort of the big 2-pronged side of this is 1, practical in Millfield, maximizing the food available in Millfield and getting the most out of food. And then 2, a theoretical basis so that students do have that fundamental understanding. And the final sort of point and want to end on is food is social at Millfield. We've got a massive responsibility to facilitate healthy relationships in this age group with food, to support that later in life to move through life with that healthy relationship with food. I'm a big believer in the 80-20 rule, sort of thinking about as long as 80% of the time we are meeting nutrition requirements, we can use that 20% to have a good relationship with food and enjoy different food. So you see that in the dining hall. That's one. It's a place on campus where students can interact with each other. They can have chats, they can have conversations whilst enjoying different food. So we've got that sort of real big focus through the dining hall. I'd encourage you also to follow the Millfield Nutrition Instagram account we follow. So on here we post menu highlights, so what good dishes to look out for on the menu, as well as just general nutritional knowledge posts, and then also stories showing what is on display in the dining hall. So thank you very much. That's everything I've gone to go through.
Yeah. Thank you, Adam. I really appreciate that. So there's been a couple of questions come through just about some of the demands, unique demands for some of the students. But I think what I'll sort of do for now, if I can just move into some questions. So please do fire some questions if you want, but we're trying to keep this authentic as possible so you understand some of the challenges that are there, but how we're trying to support students to help make those right decisions. So I'm just going to, Izzy, if you can just unmute, I'm just going to just talk to you just to sort of describe as a swimmer your typical day. Because it's pretty full on in many cases, just therefore how you try to fuel that day, particularly from an academic and sporting perspective.
So should I start?
Go for it.
So for example, today's Tuesday. So on a typical Tuesday, I'd have swimming 5:45 till 7:45. I'd then have a gym session P2, so that's lesson 2 of the day, and then I'd have sometimes we have Mr. Sutton's nutrition workshop at lunchtime, and then after school 4 till 6 I'll have swimming as well. So that's probably like one of my busiest days of the week. Within the morning, so in Southfield, which is the house I'm in, the kitchen's open all day, so in the mornings I can go in there. I'm a big fan of bran flakes, so that is normally my go-to meal in the mornings. Pretty standard, nothing too special, does the job. So then I get to swimming, and then after breakfast after swimming we then go to breakfast like as a team, and there's always loads of things on offer. So today it was croissants, which may not be the most nutritional meal, but then there was also like porridge, which I had as well, and a couple of slices of toast, and then there's always fruit available. And then obviously lunchtime, so spag bowl, that's a nice meal. Everyone loves a good spag bowl. That's spaghetti bolognese. Sorry, I didn't know why I shortened it, family thing. But yeah, that was nice. And then after training today, it was like pork, wedges, and then like coleslaw. I really like so when I joined in year 9, the salads and like food, like it was kind of just the main meal at the bar, but now they've started to incorporate more types of protein into the meal. So there's always like chickpeas, these big, I think they're called butter beans, I think. So they're always really nice to have in meals, or like just some extra like sweet corn or cucumber, things like that. Really nice to have. So yeah.
Izzy, just did you manage to fuel today in and around your weight session? So around period 2, you just had breakfast probably about 8:30, knowing the time that you guys got get up there. But you then, in period 2, one of your private study sessions in sixth form, you can go on and train in the gym. Did you eat before? Did you eat after? Or how did you, just talk us through whether that was something you do regularly.
So I don't generally eat before and after my gym sessions, but that's just because I have such a big breakfast. Like It doesn't really occur to me having some sort of protein or carbohydrate before would probably enhance my performance. And that's maybe something, I know there was a trial running at the pool where they had these energy bars before training sessions, but honestly, because I've just had breakfast an hour or so ago and having like all that food, sometimes I don't feel the need to have it. But there are lots of like vending machines and things like that which have sports drinks in, or I remember my favorite flavor was the berry bars. That's how I remember it. But those are the best ones that I had. So yeah.
Okay. All right. No, that's good. So and your day's pretty extreme. Scarlett, do you mind just unmuting and just share hockey player? Like, just give us a good feel of how that works for you as well, because the demands are really different, aren't they?
Yeah. So usually for example, a Thursday, I'd have a gym PS, which is period 2 as well. And then I'd have a hockey session at lunch that's on the pitch. And then I would have club after school. So I obviously have breakfast, usually 2 pieces of toast and eggs. And then for lunch, we go to lunch after our training session as a group as well. And then I'd usually go to dinner, and then after dinner, I'd go to club training.
Yeah. And you mentioned that it's quite unique for you guys, particularly in hockey, because you'll do a lot of travel off campus, won't you, as well? So what do you currently do to make sure you have something before you go and after? How we use, what decisions do you make to try to make sure you're fueled?
Yeah, no, so if I can't make dinner, then I will ask a friend to bring it back to house, and they can put it in the fridge for me for when I get back from training. But usually most of the time we have time to go to dinner before training, which is good for us.
Cool. Okay, so you always feel like you can get enough in, just sort of support that and come back quite late.
Yeah, no, there's definitely always ways around, like us getting food. There's always an option for us, even if that's in a house. Like after, there's always like toast, cereal, options for us in house.
Okay. Good, thank you. Darcy, do you mind just unmuting? So Adam sort of identified some of those challenges around the environment, because if you imagine there's 1,300 students or 1,300 different schedules, everyone mapping things together. So campus is always, it's a small ecosystem, it's pretty buzzing around that. What do you find most difficult throughout the days to stay A, fueled and B, hydrated?
I don't find it too bad to stay hydrated, because I bring my bottle with me, and I'll fill it up at the pool after I leave training in the morning, or house in the morning, or like a gym session. And there's lots of like water fountains around campus, which I find quite useful in order to fill up my bottle. Before PS sessions with like the swimmers, I will either like bring some food that I have with me, or like I'll take some fruit from the dining hall.
Yeah.
And like worst comes worst, if we need anything before and after, we can ask our coaches, because they've got like supplies which we can have in cases where we've got like a gym session and we're unable to get anything straight away or go back to house to get some food.
Yeah.
But yeah, just I make sure to have like big meals before and after, because I'm usually like pretty hungry when we get out after training.
Yeah. And as you're right, identified, it is difficult to get into those habits of knowing there's things here. How do you make them happen? So, Scarlett, if you were any new student was coming in next year, so they're coming into lower six to play hockey, what would be your top tips for them to just think about how to fuel and hydrate their day so they can be at the best in the classroom and every opportunity in their sport?
I would say, like Darcy said, it's really important that you keep hydrated throughout the day. So definitely like bring a water bottle, and it means that you always got it for training. So if you bring it to your lessons, I'd say also it's really, really important to have like, make sure you're getting those 3 like balanced meals a day. Make sure you're also like getting your protein options, even if that's not in the main section. If it's in the salad bar, there's always options there. And then like making sure you're prioritizing your recovery. So after a session or after a match or something like that, make sure that you're having those isotonic drinks, those milkshakes or whatever it is, to make sure you're rehydrated, ready for the next day, ready for training.
Great. And is there anything different from you? If you're swimmers coming into lower sixth, you're buddying up with them, they're in lower sixth, and you know how important it is for you to stay fueled throughout the day, what would be your top tips for a budding or swimmer coming in?
My top tips would probably be like, look, when you go into the dining room, like, don't have such a closed mindset of like, I have to get the main meal and only the main meal, because when I joined in year 9, everyone just kind of rushed to the main counter, and maybe it's because there was a lack of choice, but certainly over the last 2 years, the middle bit, I know Mr. Sutton showed the slides, like the middle bit of the dining hall is full of such good food. And I'm not really, I mean, I've had a couple of workshops, but I'm not really, I don't research my food that much. But I do know after sessions, like we've learned the basics. So after a really long day of having 2 swim sessions and gym, I know I need to get the extra protein in and carbohydrates to real fuel and like repair my muscles. So, and because of the handy little like protect, repair, excel things on all the things, it's really handy to like look at certain foods and go, maybe I'll have a few more chickpeas in like the curry tonight or things like that. And it's just adding little things into your diet. Or like, so for me, I don't particularly like the taste of chickpeas. Like, they don't really taste like anything. But if you put them in the food and just like mush it all around, it all seems to work out perfectly. So just small things like that.
Yeah, good tips. Adam, that leads in really well, because I know since you've been here with us just for over a year, big focus for you is getting that dining hall right. You spoke about well, a social environment, but it's got to be right how it's designed, how you make choices, and I guess in some ways how we subtly nudge and create opportunities for people to learn something about what the right things are. So do you mind just sort of talking to us and explaining a little more about the work going on in the dining hall, educationally and subtly, so to help people make choices, to know they can take things away if they're not going to get into the dining hall a bit later. So what you're trying to do so people can feel like it's a natural place to go.
So yeah, starting off with being able to take things away from time, we want sort of really trying to encourage clear communication with house parents, because that's where the grab and go options are approved from. So there's like a Microsoft form that students can put in if they know if they're sort of strict for time over the lunch period, having that clear communication with house parents to be able to go through the Microsoft form, get it approved, and then they just need to come and collect a grab and go option, and then they're out the dining hall without even having to queue or sort of plate up their food. So that's just one option to really sort of try and clear up that communication pathway. The next sort of other things in the dining hall, like we said, that food labeling. I think that understanding the difference between just a blanket approach with a training schedule, just thinking every day looks the same, and trying to sort of go really specific and thinking, what is the context of my day, what are the demands of my day, and how's my food best going to facilitate that. So I think those pie charts we've got around can be really handy in thinking, just being able to show that subtle difference. It doesn't have to be anything massive, just be a couple of different sort of portion sizes on the plate, but thinking about how that can look different. Like you mentioned nudges, and sort of one thing we are sort of looking at is that nudge theory, and thinking about how we can make subtle subconscious labeling in the dining hall to navigate nutritional choices. So for example, there's a dish of the day on the menu that should be on the parent portal. The sort of knife, fork, spoon logo that was on the back of the slide, that's next to sort of a dish of the day on each menu day. So thinking about that's a sort of a really good sort of option to have a sort of can contribute to a well-balanced meal, whether it's the vegetarian option, meat options on the salad bar. I know the way I've put it is so it does rotate through all the main areas of the dining hall. Then the final thing we've been looking at specifically this term, and it's been sort of some of the findings which should be really sort of quite interesting, is we've been doing some research and data collection, looking at highlighting nutritional benefits and sort of contents of food, and whether that can manipulate food choice, and sort of really sort of try and nudge in those directions. So examples of things that we've been doing this term is source of fiber signs, source of protein signs, and then little health reminders. So like one of your 5 a day near the bed, just to get that nudge in. And then, like I said, it's been as a part of a research project. So we've got some data to collect that we've been collecting and analyze over the sort of half-term period, to really sort of think about how we can best facilitate. If those nudges are working, well, we can keep them in, but if they're not, what else can we do to continue nudging? So really try and make it sort of a dynamic environment.
Cool. And a couple of questions just come in. So this one for you, Adam. How often will we typically serve fish options like salmon, like non-fried stuff?
Yeah, so non-fried, one thing that I think is really good on the menu is, so a lot of sort of catering environments will have a fish Friday, fish and chips Friday. There's always an option to have a grilled or plain option, and it rotates between salmon and mackerel. And then also at least once a week there is an oily fish within the as one of the main composites on the salad bar. So there's, just off the top of my head, there's a tuna panzanella salad, mackerel niçoise salad, and a tandoori salmon salad. So at least once a week there's a main composite with fish.
Okay, thanks for that. And there's another comment from a parent there about just sharing this with students, because often them understanding, like the girls here have been really good around describing how they've had to navigate to get that bit right, but whether we can share this with students, and yeah, absolutely we will. I think the more that we can make people aware of how to navigate and get access to all of that at the right times is really, really important. So good, good on that one. Let me just have a look here. Can you just describe as well? So the girls sort of articulated it quite well, like some rest days, some heavy days. Just sort of describe different approaches to, say, for the swimmers, what you'd expect them to do, say, on a rest day. Do you ever get a rest day, Darcy and Izzy? Probably. And then also like a really heavy training day. So Izzy just sort of articulated that 3-session day, and Scarlett as well spoke about, God, you got a lunchtime session in the gym, and then she's gone to club. That's not unusual with that demand of it. So if we take that versus a day after a major competition or on rest day, what do you expect that to look different?
Yeah.
If you can just bring that to life.
So I think if we go back to sort of like think about the first slide where we had up all the components that contribute to energy expenditure, the big one that's going to be changing there and either being increased on the high intensity day or the low intensity day is that exercise activity demand. So thinking about, typically on those rest and recovery days, energy requirement will be lower. It will still be very high, sort of relative to sort of the sort of average and norm data. However, it won't be as high as those high intensity double or triple training days. So the sort of nutritional demands, sort of nutritional choices we can make is ultimately, in general, the lower the intensity of the day, sort of the less demand there is on carbohydrate, just because of the fueling demands of those high intensity days. And then as naturally on a plate, as the proportion of carbohydrate goes down, there's going to be more space left on the plate. So I really tell students to think about maximizing those low intensity days as not a way to remove sort of carbohydrate, because we still need that carbohydrate for that fueling and that repair. However, we need to think about where we can also maximize that plate space with fruit, lots more fruit and veg, because sometimes on those high intensity demands, we've got such a large requirement of carbohydrate to have the stomach space to have to be getting in lots and lots of vegetable, like a large portion of vegetables on that day, realistically it's not possible. It's going back to that perfect versus practical thing. So if we're thinking our number one focus on those high intensity days is carbohydrate, naturally with the amount of stomach and appetite space that we're going to have, vegetable intake will fall off. So thinking about if we've got more space on those lower intensity days, using that as a chance to maximize on those days.
So, I mean, that's about the day. And what I'm just hearing you sort of particularly say is then you need to look at the week. So it's great understanding those days, but to get the balance overall, is it better to look across the week overall and therefore recognize that heavy days are going to be dominant around carbohydrate, but rest days, you need to use those opportunities or lower intensity days to fuel different things in a different way? Yeah,
I always encourage students, if they're to pick through pick out their training week, think about traffic lighting it. So green, high intensity sessions, amber, sort of moderate day to day, and then red, your low intensity sessions. And then from that, you can really picture where and think about what your nutrition requirements are going to be on each day. And some of that may even change. If we get really specific, that could change meal to meal. So for example, the swimmers, if they've got an early session the next day, but they've rested the day before, we still need to be thinking about maybe a high carbohydrate meal in the evening to get ready for that next day. So there's always an aspect of thinking of context and thinking what is the most ideal option for that context of the training.
And we've had a dialogue, haven't we? And I think it's an important thing that the more coaches can signal on that type of day, that will also help the fueling. So knowing I'm going into red day or green day will help that choices, and therefore that's available at the dining hall. So that connection is really important. And I know that's ongoing work and it's not all in place yet, but I think that sends a signal. So this is to all the girls here, just a general question. What would you like to see more of in nutrition provision at the school, and just talk about why? So you've obviously learned to navigate it and do the best you can. We've sort of said it's not perfect and there's more to do, but what would you need more of? What do you think parents can do more of to sort of help that as well for, you know, if their children at the school? So it's a free open space for you to sort of share your thoughts. I'll start with Darcy, you go.
Put me on the spot.
That's okay.
I personally I know Izzy doesn't, but before my gym sessions and like after them, especially if it's a P2, even if I've just had breakfast, I get quite hungry. So other than having to like ask the coaches, because I know sometimes, not me, but sometimes others don't want to ask coaches for those snacks, maybe having them out in a set location so like the coach's office, where you, by the entrance, where you can just walk in and grab them without disturbing anyone, but having that like peace of mind that you can just go take one if you need it. But otherwise, like,
that's a good one.
Yeah.
So a lot on the snacking, pre and post training, the ability for good.
Because I feel like during PSs, it's usually like during your day, it's not directly after a meal. Like it's sometimes where you get hungry in between, like it's before lunch and you've worked out, so you're already like getting hungry, and it kind of like pushes you over where you need something to like just snack on to get you through and to like replenish what you've burnt off during the gym session.
Great. Okay, perfect. Scarlett, I'll go to you next. Any thing that you think need more of? So you girls obviously are pretty sophisticated in the way you try to manage your schedules and do the best you can, but again, other things that you think would help and how parents can help their children in school just get the best out of the opportunity?
I think in school, I think it would be definitely beneficial for us as athletes to have maybe more sort of like nutritional things in the house for us to eat, maybe after training or after a session or something like that. I think also, like Darcy said, the ability to get a snack after a PS session or a gym session, I think obviously is available for the swimmers, but maybe for all athletes to have somewhere where they could go to get a snack after a PS session. And I think also for when you're coming back to school, to make sure that you are bringing snacks back, because it's such a busy schedule, to have something to eat in between those sessions would be good.
Okay, great. And is there anything different you'd add to that?
All I'd say is like when your children come to the school or when you drop them off, like maybe just remind them to be like, have an open mind. Like, I know I've said it a couple of times, but I wouldn't say I guess I'm quite lucky because I'm not really a picky eater. But if you just search in the dining hall for things that you like to eat, like they're there somewhere. Some of my friends are quite picky eaters, and like recently they've decided to like come out their shell a bit and not just go for like the jacket potato and beans, and actually really discovered things that they'd like. So I'd actually say most of it's about having an open mind. There's something to improve on. I know there was a comment about like training for before competitions for elite swimmers. So sometimes in house before competitions, like if I'm racing on a Sunday morning, there's not like a full English breakfast ready to go like you'd have up at the dining hall. So I tend to just have a couple of Weetabix and crack on with the day, really. And so like I don't know if something, for some people they require something more, and I don't know whether or not that would be that have to be a conversation between your coach and the swimmer. So maybe like, as you said before, developing the relationship between food and your coaches between training.
Yeah. And those competition days we know are a challenge. Like the first few years I've been to these festival days, and they are significantly demanding for young people, more so than just doing a single event. So I can see how that's a challenge. And obviously your coaches try to bring lots of food in for the day so you can graze throughout the day as well. But there's definitely a bit there, so that's really good. Adam, did you want to comment this?
Yeah, so I was just going to say, with one of the massive challenges, another challenge that we do have is similar to leaving for meets and sort of that breakfast. If you can't get to the dining hall and something, so you're relying on in-house feeding. I think the big thing that I would encourage, and one needs work, and but sort of this sort of groundwork's already in place, is the ability just to communicate in advance to the house parents and matrons to really get that, because there are specific foods that when they do their weekly house orders, there can be certain breakfast items that they can order in specifically for that environment, whether it's porridge oat sachets, whether it's getting a certain type of toast, making sure there's their favorite cereal in. I think that's the biggest thing that I would encourage, is just there's options there that can be ordered in. It's just, like I said, about that whole communication pathway, just really being open and honest and sort of saying, I've got this requirement, I can't get to the dining hall, can this be ordered in so that I've got this? I think that's really important. And
that comment was made by a couple of parents, all right, just aligning that triangle, so that makes it much easier for children to know how to do that with the education. So it's a really good point. Now it is there, we just need to make sure that those communication loops are available. Good. So there's a couple of questions just come in, and this one I will answer, but it's from Mrs. Taylor Ross about the increase in eating disorders, particularly in high performing teens. What does the school do to monitor intake and recognise potential problems early? And I guess we're not the experts in this space, but I think that's the role where the house parents and the counselling team come in. So house parents, the way I describe the role of the house parent, is a bit like the head coach. They often have best oversight of the child in many situations and can work with the individual sports coach and others to try to identify when those situations occur. And obviously access to some of those specialist services is beyond my expertise and beyond Adam's, but there are specialist services that we can call on to do that. But there is a triangulation, in many situations, and the systems in the school where people observe changes in behaviors, particularly around food. We see really good feedback from friends and peers. They're around their friends all the time. And if they think something unusual, they can flag that to the house parents. So there's lots of ways that can be done. But yeah, we do have the expertise in the house, or they refer to the specialist if need be. But it's a really good comment around that, particularly in modern day, especially after lockdown as well. Another question here about a young a young child in year 9, said he's always hungry, but a really good idea about get older and younger students to work together, maybe as sort of buddies to learn how to navigate the systems that are there. I'd welcome what your thoughts are. Would you be happy to do that, girls? Yeah. Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Well, listen, we just come towards the end of the webinar. I know we've only just sort of touched on the idea. Hopefully, we just wanted to give you a share of how important eating and hydration is. We know it's quite hard to navigate that, but hopefully you got an idea of the things that we're trying to do and the challenges of how you can use that to your advantage. It is difficult. I have spent time, really fortunate in my background, to work with some of the best athletes in the world, and they don't fuel right, even though we used to have a kitchen truck outside a hotel and a private chef, and they would still get those things wrong. So it isn't an easy thing to solve. And even when the very best sort of get it wrong, and we're trying to educate and support young people to get that right in what's a mad lifestyle, particularly at Millfield. So hopefully it's give you a bit of an insight. Really do appreciate you tuning in. Thank you, Izzy, Darcy and Scarlett, for spending your evening, Adam for putting together some of that content. We will make this available for others, but if you have any questions or your children are in the school and they're unsure, please get in contact with Adam or the head coach just to find ways of doing that. And we'll always look to find better ways to ensure the food's done in the right way. So thank you, everybody. Have a good evening, and we'll see you at the next session. See you all. Bye-bye.